previous film, I suggested that where your attention goes determines to some extent whether you move backwards to depressing thoughts, forwards to anxiety-provoking thoughts, or whether you spend your time actually in reality, which is the present moment, when things are usually a lot better than the reinterpretation of the past or the anticipation of the future. So let me give you some tools which I commonly use and I recommend to people to try and be a little bit more present. The first one, it doesn't sound like a tool, so maybe I won't call it a tool. The first one is really developing the intention to be more present. To develop the intention to be more present probably flies in the face of many, many years of habitual allocation of attentional resources, which basically means you're probably well practiced at putting your mind or putting your attention in the past. You're probably well practiced at putting your attention in the future, depending upon whether depression or anxiety, low mood or worry are the things that you struggle with. So recognizing that that's not necessarily a very good thing to do, it's not very helpful, is the first step. So the first tool, let's say, is developing the intention to keep your attention in the present, more in the present. So you could say, I want to be more present. Some folks who do this kind of work say that being in the present is being awake, and then being in the past or being in the future is like being asleep, because you're in a kind of a fantasy, virtual reality world. Only the present is real. So you might develop the intention to be more present or more awake. If we develop the intention to be more present or more awake, we can also ask the question, well, why have we not done this in the past? What is it that takes our attention away from the present moment? Well, the newsroom, the radio and the television and the print, they have captured this idea. It's much more dramatic to reinterpret the past in a very negative way. It's much more attention-getting to look at the disasters of the Second World War or whatever you like. It's much more attention-getting to look at what terrible things might happen in the future. That's far more interesting to our brains because it's going to be catastrophic. There'll be, millions of deaths and destruction and hurricanes and all sorts of terrible things. The reality of, went to work, it was okay, had a successful week, went to bed happy and contented, that doesn't capture our attention nearly so much unless we have a reason to do it, and that's the intention to be present or to be awake. So we need to find ways, therefore, to remind ourselves to be present and to be awake. So here's one for you. Do you have an alarm clock on your phone? If you do, why not set the alarm clock to give you a buzz every hour on the hour, or every half hour on the half hour, or as often as you like? Because the first time you do it, you'll go, yeah, I was awake, I was present. But a few times later, it will be a surprise that your alarm has got off. You'll say, gosh, is it that time already? And you'll start to recognize that over the course of a day or a few days, that a lot of your time, when the alarm goes off, your attention is actually going to be somewhere else other than where you are and what you're doing. So setting an alarm clock is a good way of reminding yourself to be present and to be awake. And it's a really interesting exercise, because when people do that and they report back to me, they say, gosh, it's amazing how often my mind is elsewhere when the alarm goes off. So that's the first one. Try that and see how you get on with it. There are lots of low-tech tools that you can use, but how about this? Why not put wake up or be present on a post-it or a number of post-its and just post them in different places where you go. On the mirror in the bathroom, on the mirror in your bedroom, wherever you kind of go repetitively. On your computer screen or next to your computer screen, have a little post-it. Send yourself an email that you can print out and put in various places. Put it on your phone as a picture. So find some kind of picture which characterizes being present or being awake, and put it on your screensaver on your computer or your screensaver on your phone. The object of the exercise is to constantly remind yourself to bring your attention away from the past or away from the future into the present where you have control. And in truth, anything that you can do which reminds you to bring your attention into the present is going to be helpful. Now, a third one which I quite like, and I use a lot, especially with my clients, is to create a phrase which reminds you to be present or awake. Now, a phrase that you could use would be something like, I intend to stay awake. I intend to be present. And you use that phrase a lot so that it becomes automatic. So the way that conditioning and associative learning works is that if you associate something with something else, whenever you see the something else, the thing that you associated with it comes up. So, for instance, if you went into the bathroom, looked in the mirror and said, I intend to stay awake, I intend to stay awake, I intend to stay awake 100 times, the next time you go to the bathroom and look in the mirror, I intend to stay awake will pop into your mind automatically. We use the power of learning to create a wake-up trigger. Likewise, whenever you walk somewhere or go to the car, you put the key in the car door, that's usually a signal to start to fall asleep and go automatically. Well, if you actually put the key in the car door, sit in the car seat and say, I intend to stay awake, I intend to be present, I intend to stay awake, I intend to be present, 100 times, the next time you get in the car, you will do that. You'll remember that you're going to try and stay awake. And there are many areas in your life which you typically would just wander off. Walking is a great example because we all know how to walk more or less, and when you walk, your mind starts to wander. Any kind of repetitive action is really quite a dangerous one for a mind going back into depressing or forward into anxiety-provoking thoughts. So create a phrase, practice it in particular places, and it will become associated with those places, and it becomes a powerful trigger to stay awake. And finally, just to remind you of why we're doing this. If we put our mind in the past is history. We can only reinterpret it, and because it's already happened. And if you suffer from low mood or depression or anxiety in truth and stress, then you're typically going to reinterpret elements of the past in a negative, overly negative, and actually inaccurate way. If you put your mind in the future is a mystery. It hasn't happened. But if you put your mind in the future, you're likely to catastrophize, to overinterpret, and to find threat, potential failure, and lots of terrible things in actuality that are unlikely to happen. And in fact, if you look back at your history, most of the things that you worry about, A, don't happen, and if they do happen, they're not as bad as you imagine that they would be. Because in the present is the only place that you have any control over your life at all. And in the present, you feel more empowered and you feel more able to do what you need to do, because the present is the place where you have control. So the more time you spend in the present, the more you have control over the mechanisms, the means of your life, the more you can make the stuff happen that you need to happen. And therefore, I advocate learning to be a little bit more present gives you quite a big boost in a sense of personal control and agency. It's well worth the small amount of time invested in being present or being awake. Thanks for taking the time to watch and listen.